Nisam Bulavinaka and warm greetings from the Pacific Conference of Churches in Suva, Fiji, to our friends from the Global Ministries. Yeah, I'm standing in our little grotto here, a little area where we had worship for International Mother Earth Day, also known as Earth Day. It was in this place where we reflected on God's creation, on our responsibility to maintain the earth as God had intended it to be, as very good, and also reflected in the context of COVID-19, in the context of the recent severe tropical cyclone Harold, the role that we need to play as church and as representatives of churches across the region, and looking at the context of not so much the new normal, but that for us in the Pacific, it is really an opportunity to renew the normal and return to the original way that we as Pacific Islanders lived, that provided us not only with the necessities of life, but had very different values, and also perhaps a way we could say was allowed us to practice our own indigenous resilience. I'm standing in what's called our Garden of Justice and Peace, where at the beginning of this year we hosted the World Council of Churches Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace, and with its focus on the Pacific, this particular garden doesn't look like much, but if you see behind me these small shrubs that are growing, these and other trees like them were planted by the pilgrim team from the WCC Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace. There are shade trees that have been planted to provide shade to people in the urban area, clean the air, and we've also planted fruit trees. And in the context of Pacific resilience, in the context of what we call the vision of the Island of Hope, and what you may think of as the new normal, our commitment to resilience has resulted in these plots of land being dug up in this space. Now, in the future, this land is marked for development. It is marked for a building that may go up to help us with our income generation. However, while we wait for the development proposal for this land, we are making use of it. What you see before you is the start of our Pacific Conference of Churches food bank. These plots of land that are in the process of being turned up. This particular plot has already been dug up, the soil has been prepared, and we have planted corn, indigenous corn, and also cabbage seedlings. And the idea is that when these gardens bear fruit, and there will be lots of vegetables growing, as well as our indigenous root crops. This is tapioca growing here. These will be then harvested and given for free to vulnerable communities, for people who may have lost jobs as a result of COVID-19. It's a way of utilizing available land for resilience in times of economic difficulties. Already the idea of a resilient food bank has been well received by the Vanuatu Christian Council and the Tongan National Council of Churches, two countries that have been affected particularly by severe tropical cyclone Harold. So this is a way of providing recovery and resilience, and also reshaping the way in which we would like to see the new norm. As I mentioned earlier, for Pacific Islanders, the new norm is perhaps perceived differently from the way many of our colleagues in the North or in the Western world would think. For us, it is a return to the values and the ethics of the kingdom of God. As I mentioned earlier, on Earth Day, we reflected on how God saw that the world was very good. And this is the way that our Pacific Islanders have always looked at the planet, looked at our environment, our vanua, our land, recognizing that this is a gift from God, that this is something that we are called to live in harmony with. The values of the Island of Hope, which was developed with the Pacific Churches as a World Council of Churches document, talked about celebrating the values that we have here in the Pacific. These are values of community, these are values of reciprocity, values of kindness, values of caring for community and caring for the vulnerable, looking at taking only what we need from the land and from the sea, and recognizing and celebrating these gifts that we are given. So this is an opportunity for us to return to that normal, and it requires a lot of work. We have really bought into some of the values that have come as part of the globalization or economic globalization values and project. We have, of course, been affected by neoliberalism, and this change that we are seeing, while it is difficult, we are drawing something out from there, something positive, something that Jesus says in John 10 will bring abundant life, and that is through following the way. So perhaps this is something for us to think about as we journey through. We have shared this with our Pacific churches in a series of pastoral letters that have spoken about COVID-19 not being God's wrath, the need of us not just to pray but to look and see what science can do, as well as ensuring that our homes are safe from violence, gender-based violence, child abuse, domestic violence, and that sort of thing. So we have been sharing these views as a way of reminding our churches about how we can journey together. It is wonderful to see that even in our Pacific Island countries, where sometimes technology is not, modern technology is not at its peak, we're able to see churches using Facebook and other sorts of technology to have worship services. And most importantly, we are seeing families come together for worship where they might not have done so in the past. And so we're seeing a growth of spirituality within the family. We are seeing a growth of recognition of important values within the communities, and a celebration of the traditional wisdom or indigenous wisdom that we have, which is providing us with opportunities for resilience. So from the Pacific Conference of Churches, may God bless you all, and may God's peace be upon you all. Tanaka.